Welcome back to the Tiny House Talk Show. I'm Damon.
And I'm Natalie.
And we are with Trailer Made Custom Trailers, if you don't already know that, the tiny house experts. And today on the Tiny House Talk Show, we're going to talk about 4 different myths kind of circling around the industry now for quite some time. They've had some legs.
Yes.
These have stuck around.
Yes, 100% from the beginning. I mean, they have lasted from the beginning.
From the beginning.
This adventure.
So we're beginning our 11th year building trailers and tiny houses this year. And these 4 things that we're going to talk about today are still, like Natalie said, very alive and well and very misleading and misunderstood. So we're going to try and shed some light on that today and see if we can't bring the industry a little bit closer to an understanding of how to work through these common myths. So what are those 4 myths, Natalie, that the industry seems to have a problem letting go of?
Well, the top 4 would be size limitations for tinies, mobility of tiny homes, the legality of tiny homes, and the financing of tiny homes.
So we're going to cover those 4, or myths covering those 4 topics, right? Surrounding that. So the first one is size limitations for tiny homes. And for those of you who are astute readers of the information you find online, you'll find it pretty commonplace that the industry says a tiny home can only be 8.5 feet wide and 13.5 feet tall. And the reality is that's just flatly false, right?
Correct. I mean, one of the first conversations or the first questions that we ask you when we're talking to you on the phone or when we're meeting you at festivals and things like that, when we're talking about your project, your dream, is are you going to be moving this very much? All right. So
let's start off with the first myth that size limitations for tiny homes, you're limited to 8.5 feet wide and 13'6" high. Is that true or false?
That is not true.
Not true. Here in Colorado, so this is, again, one of those things that we've been talking about for a long time. The internet and the experts, the other experts out there, we'll call them, haven't quite caught up to DOT laws. So what we're going to do is kind of break a little bit of that down here really quick. First thing is Colorado has a 14.5-foot maximum height limit as a state law. So you can build something up to 14'6" before you need an overheight or an oversized permit, and out to 12 feet wide without pilot cars on most roads. Now that is, as I did a little research today, that is route dependent in the width and the height section. So when you're getting a permit, it's not a complicated process, really. Yeah. It's you go on a website, cdot.gov, you put in the license plate number of the vehicle that you're going to be moving your home with, your license plate of the trailer or your tiny home in this case. You enter the dimensions, the height, the width, the length, the weight, and then you put in a point of origin as well as a destination point. Once you've put those in, that website where you get your permit will give you a designated route based on the information you give it. So if you're over 13'6", for example, you can build all the way up to, I wouldn't recommend this necessarily, all the way up to 16 feet high before you need a pilot car that has what they call a touch pole or a clearance pole on the front, out in front of you, so you don't drag power lines down. What's one of the first things that we ask people when they call in, they talk to us?
Yeah, when you guys send us quote requests and we reach out to you, or when you guys give us a call, one of the first things that we ask is, are you going to be moving this very much? Or is your tiny going to live in one spot and stay there for its life? Or are you going to maybe only move it once or twice a year? What is the life plan for that tiny? And we try to get a gauge of that for you so then we can help guide you into the best size that's going to fit your needs.
Yeah, the consultation process, if you will, what we talk about with people is be realistic about what you're watching on television, on one of the old tiny house shows that we've been on maybe. One, you can't build it for $15,000. You can't build it in 7 days. And you can't drive it around feasibly, I would say it can be done, but just because you can doesn't mean you should all the time.
Yeah.
Should drive it around like a travel trailer.
Yeah, those are few and far between. I mean, we hear the stories. We've met people that do.
Christian and Alexis, Tiny House
Yeah.
Expedition.
Yeah.
Shout out to you guys. What's up?
But that's
You're the rare exception.
yes, that is the exception to the rule.
It absolutely is. So just to kind of wrap up on this first myth about what is a legal and illegal tiny house size, we always ask you first, are you going to build this to move or are you going to build this to live in, right?
Yep.
And when you start with that question, it really does kind of reshape the paradigm that the client thinks within, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
It's nobody wants to live in the hallway behind you here.
And oftentimes people might not realize that they can build wider or that they could build taller. There's so much mixed information out there and people just don't know what they can do. That if there's a barrier of any kind, like, oh, I have to get a permit, then, it's like, oh, well, I don't want to have to deal with that. But it's
amazing what somebody's willing to sacrifice in their quality of life because they don't want to get a $15 to $30 permit online, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
So please,
Yeah.
we're not going to belabor this because we want to talk on further. And there's 3 more other, pretty hot topics around in this similar vein that we want to touch on. But if you have questions about your permitting process, give us a call. We're happy to go through it with you. We've done it before. We do it every week for a day job. The most popular size that we move in and out of this company now is definitely a 10-foot wide, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. We've built more 10 wides in the last 2 years than probably our entirety.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
Yeah.
The shift is here.
Yeah.
For those of you who are kind of considering what size of a tiny house do I want, first, be realistic about how much you're going to move this. Unless you have a $75,000 to $120,000 truck to move this thing around, you have to add in the expense of paying somebody to move it each time. And that's however many hundreds to thousands of dollars, depending on where you're going, right?
Right.
But in addition to that, the permitting process seems to be more of a scare, I think, than hiring a driver to move it for them. And just want to say it, I'll say it to this camera, then I'm going to say it again to this camera. Moving a tiny house that's inside of 12 feet wide is a very, very easy process. Yes, it is a permitted load. Yes, it does require an extra step. No, you do not need to be a commercial driver to move it because it's your personal property.
Right.
There might be certain times of the day that you can move. You can't go before 8 o'clock and you can't go after 3:30. So that way you're not interfering with rush hour traffic flow wherever you might be.
Yeah, who wants to though?
Nobody's looking forward to moving a tiny house in rush hour traffic. I promise you.
I know. Yeah.
Not myself. Not anybody that's ever moved any for us.
No.
The sweet spot, and just to kind of wrap this up, the sweet spot for a permitted load and quality of life, we've kind of found this year is what size would you say is the?
I would say 30 by 10 is definitely the most common this last year. 30 to 32 by 10.
I was going to say 10 by 28 to 10 by 32.
Yeah.
That range. So we're right there in the same mindset.
Yep.
20-25% 8 wide still, or has that fallen even further now?
No, I think we're still probably in that about a quarter of them.
It's only a quarter though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think what we see is kind of touching on that. Let's move on to myth number 2, because I think this kind of goes hand in hand.
The mobility.
Yeah, it does.
Of a tiny.
So the mobility of tiny homes, the misconception is that these are meant to be travel trailer replacements, and the simple fact is they're not. They're not even built to the same code, and they're even called RVs, right? One's an RV and another's an RV, but they're very different, aren't they?
Entirely. Tiny homes is built like a home. It's used, oftentimes the same materials that are used in a traditional home are used in a tiny home. Not so much in an RV. No. Not so much in a travel trailer.
We've learned a lot about poly panels in the RV industry, haven't we?
Right.
For those of you who don't know what a poly panel is, it's some version of either plastic or foam, corrugated or aerated or compressed with plastic of some sort, some kind of a polyester polymer film bonded to either side of it to make kind of a plastic SIP panel. It's the best way I know how to describe it. We've worked on a couple of RV projects in this past year, prototyping some stuff that hopefully it'll come to market one of these days, but it's still a
Right.
long way off. And knowing that deep into the RV industry and its components, like what it's made of, it really is an eye opener, isn't it?
Very much so.
It's amazing we survived 3 Colorado winters in our fifth wheel.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
I'm not. Not really.
So let's talk about that second myth, that the tiny houses are, I'm going to build a tiny house, I'm going to get a truck, and I'm going to tour the country with it in tow, and I'm going to pull up to every cute place and take a picture for Instagram. And
Yeah. Again, the exception,
yeah,
not the rule. And there's still very much this romantic idea that you're going to do just that.
Yeah.
Is that you're going to take this all over the country. And some people do. That's not to say that people haven't.
right.
However, it's just not the majority of the people.
It's not.
And oftentimes, if you aren't used to driving trailers or pulling RVs or anything like that, after you move your tiny the first time and endure maybe a little bit of stress, people recognize, nope, I don't think I want to take this all over the country. Mm-hmm. I think that's a very real, eye-opening experience.
Oh, it's very real.
Yeah.
This is how you can immerse yourself in that reality. A little experiment. Close your eyes and imagine.
Do you want me to close my eyes?
Sure,
Imagine?
go ahead.
Okay.
Everybody, we'll ask everybody to close your eyes and imagine what it's like to back up and drop the hitch of your home onto the back of a truck with everything you hold dear in it, and you have to drive it, let's say, 200 miles. How does that feel? Are you So that anxiety that's building right now, I don't want to hypnotize anybody into panic here, but first of all, if you haven't seen some of our other videos, you actually see me experience that anxiety when I'm moving somebody else's home, and I have 1 or 2 trips down the road with a tiny house behind me, so I feel I have a little experience anyway.
Just a little bit.
And it's scary every single time. I don't get comfortable. I don't get complacent. Every once in a while, I have to move something that's not on one of our trailers, and that really kind of makes me a little extra nervous.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see it. So there's just that one little what if out there.
Yeah.
You know. Point being, it's not a fun adventure to embark on to move your tiny home, whether it's 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet, 14 feet wide, and in any length or height. It's still your home. It's scary. We've seen accidents out there in the tiny house world. Nobody wants to be a statistic, I guess, is the best thing to do. So unless you're experienced and this is your plan and you already have the equipment or plans to get the equipment and the means and the resources to do so, or, go get a big truck and pull your 10 or 20,000 pound tiny house all over the country. Remember too that tires on that and the tow vehicle are an added cost. It's just an expensive alternative to travel trailers, which let's talk about that for a second. So there's a travel trailer code and then there's a park model RV code, and they're both ANSI, ANSI. One is 119.2 and the other one is 119.5, right?
Right.
So point 2 is relating specifically to travel trailer RVs, and 119.5 is for park models, park model RVs, which is what historically we have labeled our tiny houses and certified them as park model 1195 coded tiny homes. Or tiny home word is a bad word, but you got to say park model RV, and we'll say why here in a second. So the biggest difference between those two is quite simply travel trailers have holding tanks and are not required to hook up to shore power, shore water, shore sewer to operate.
Right.
They can boondock or camp, right? They have battery services on board. They have heat and air conditioning services that can be run with that battery or gas power on board if they're not hooked up to shore services. Park model RVs, on the other hand, are actually, for all intents and purposes, they're just really small mobile homes. They have a lower than residential building code requirement. The RV park model code 119.5 is pathetic. It only calls for like 7 or 8 in the ceiling.
Right.
R value 5 in the walls, and like 3 on the floor or something. It's just, it's awful. So
Yeah.
that's the purpose for different codes, but that's also why jurisdictions have historically not allowed full-time human occupancy in any sort of an RV, because it doesn't have the insulation value to sustain life if all power goes out. Whether or not we want it to be, it's supposed to be for our own good, that you can't live full-time in an RV. Never mind telling that to the 25 million Americans in this country living full-time illegally as criminals and as full-time RVers. Somehow we don't see, statistics of body counts just skyrocketing from RV life.
Right.
We're hoping that they're going to change their minds about that going forward. And we have some new codes that are in the works in other states besides here in Colorado. We have a tiny house code, but it's essentially an IRC code.
Right.
It's like building to an ADU. So for those of you who want to do your research about what it's like to get a certificate of occupancy on a tiny house, Colorado does have its law in effect as of July 1st, 2023. We were in the room where it happened for over a year. We sat in those phone calls and meetings and did our best to plead our case. We kind of got railroaded a little bit by the manufactured housing industry. They have a little bit more of a megaphone and a pocketbook than we do here in the tiny house world. So it's how politics work.
Yeah.
But with that, the tiny house code in Colorado gives a precedent. It sets a standard for the United States, kind of like we did with weed and a couple other cool things. But in tiny homes, we get to give a certificate of occupancy from a state level. So an inspector can come out and say, yes, you did your electrical right, you did your foundation right, you did your plumbing, your HVAC, your insulation, you put this thing together, great. I signed off on each phase after I came out and inspected it on each phase of construction. Like I said, this is going to be just like site construction housing.
Yeah.
They didn't do it to make it easier. They did it to make sure that they had
oversight.
Yeah, oversight and kind of plausible deniability. Nobody wants a lawsuit saying, "Well, you let this silly tiny house come in and plug into our electricity,
right,
and it caught on fire and burned everybody to the ground in their sleep." Nobody wants that call. So this is why the back and forth. There have been plenty of illegitimate tiny homes and tiny home builders out there peddled over the decade that we've been doing this. We've seen them. Some don't stay dry on the inside. Some don't have proper electrical wiring and plan sets, no certifications or inspections. So this is all kind of the Wild West coming to an end, I think.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned, I want you to talk about this for just a second before we get on to the third myth. You were talking about in one of the forums, or several of the forums actually, about if it sounds too good to be true in terms of pricing, buyer beware, because it just might be.
Yeah, there's several different Facebook groups for tinies, and in one of them, see often that people are posting about how many scammers are in there, and if it's too good to be true, that is the fact. You're not going to be building a tiny house today for $30,000. That's just, materials, there's just no way. So if you see somebody that is advertising something like that with prices like that, it's not possible. On average,
it's not likely.
It's not likely.
Ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
We won't. I would back up just one step short of saying it's not possible, because we've seen some people get close, and it depends on the size. There's so many factors to measure that. But to say, hey, I'm going to buy a brand new, 8x28 triple axle tiny house trailer for $40,000, and I'm going to have it delivered to you in 30 days from scratch. That promise has been made to somebody out there, and I'm fairly certain that's a false promise.
Right. And I've even seen them. I saw a thread just yesterday about axles, people reusing mobile home chassis or things like that. Or, they'll have a 34-foot long trailer and it only has 2 axles, and those aren't even 7,000-pound axles. So be really, really careful and wise and ask questions and do your research. And if you aren't sure, call us. We'll happily share with you what's going to be best. It is the foundation for your home. And there's a lot of shady stuff that I'm seeing, and it's really unfortunate.
I kind of feel like over the last decade that we've been out educating people, our friends in the industry that have been in this a long time, that have run professional organizations to deliver tiny home and tiny home goods to the business and to the industry and its patrons. I think mostly Everybody's kind of wise to that now. Like it's a terrible idea to reuse a single trip purpose-built mobile home axle. Single trip, it's in the name.
Right.
It's already been used for its job in its life. That's why it's no longer on a trailer somewhere. So just don't. Just don't. It's don't actively sign up to participate in the Darwin Awards.
Yeah. There's lots of other places during the process where you'll be able to save some money.
You can repurpose. And I wouldn't even say that repurposing a specific tiny house trailer axle is a terrible idea, because we order ours custom designed, engineered, and built for tiny home applications from all the manufacturers that we do. I would be okay reusing those as long as, obviously, they'll fit any trailer-made foundation. But if somebody out there, if you guys have taken your axles off and you don't know what to do with them, reach out to us. We might have somebody out there that says, I'm willing to sign a waiver that says I'll buy so-and-so's used axles and put them on my new foundation to get it to where it's going to sit on blocks or on a stem wall or something like that. So, do some repurposing amongst yourselves. And as long as everything's above board and all the safety standards are met, then I think that's okay. But God almighty, definitely not a single trip mobile home axle.
No.
Please don't.
No.
Okay. What's our next myth? Legality of tiny homes. So this kind of ties into what we were just talking about with ANSI code, doesn't it? I'm going to bring this up for just a moment. The two types of ANSI code is 119.2 and 119.5. For any of you out there, listeners who want an email copy of the 2021 ANSI code, we have that available. If you'll email Damon, DAMON, at trailermadetrailers.com, I'll send you a copy of that so you can look through it.
Yep.
And a lot of DIYers out there started asking the questions this year and have for years now, but really this is what I was pointing to about kind of the mobile home thing really being tamped out finally and repurposing RV trailers and stuff like that. That's all. Yeah, there's always going to be a contingent of people that are just diehard, call them survivalists.
Yeah.
But I think the industry as a whole has kind of moved on from that fantasy land and onto they have to build something that's going to stand up to code.
Yeah.
Stand up to scrutiny, and stand up to 20 to 50 plus years of use. That in mind, the two codes we kind of blend to get above and beyond ANSI 119.5, and that's with IRC modular. So IRC modular is when you build a house, a stick frame house that goes on a foundation, but you build it in chunks or pieces, and then you move those pieces out. And then those pieces are largely built inside of a factory before they come out to the job site and get stitched together. With technology that we've borrowed from that industry in the last half a dozen years, coupled with our foundations and our CFS designs, I think it's become pretty important for people to certify their their DIY project. Pro builders out there, you guys, it's time. You can't build a tiny house in the gray area anymore, really. Yeah. Lots and lots of states have kind of shut the door on that or are in the process of that. There's several companies, we'll talk about that too since we're on the legalities of tiny houses, but most important thing to do is to make sure that you don't have a tiny house when you're talking to somebody, right? I know it sounds weird. What's that mean? Tell everybody what that means.
Well, there's no definitive lane or box for us yet. So like we share with you guys when you're wanting to register your trailers, that's a flatbed trailer. And that's what the DMV will recognize it as. If you say it's a tiny house trailer or we say it's a tiny house trailer, the DMV doesn't know what you're talking about. And then they may have to go find somebody. And then there's all this hoopla at the DMV, and we've been on the phone with many people at the DMV, which is totally fine, and we're happy to help. But when you just use the words flatbed trailer, then there's no questions about it. And that is essentially what it is before you're putting your home on it. It is a flatbed trailer.
The misconception that tiny homes are largely illegal to place in most jurisdictions is as simple as mentioning that they're park model RVs covered under ANSI 119.5 RV code. Done. We had a lot to talk about at the show in June, right?
Yeah.
Colorado Tiny House Festival. First of all, we expected 10 or 12,000 people, and we were kind of excited to see that potential attendance there since the lockdown. The show's been slowly coming back. It was a little weird in 22 because of the It was the first year since the pandemic. But this year, so we expected maybe 10 or 12,000 people. And when we had over 15,500 through on Saturday, it was kind of like the first one all over again. There was over, Art won't give me a firm number. He's being coy.
Oh.
But he said it's yeah, I'm talking about you, Art. He said it's more than 20, less than 25,000.
Okay. Well,
so
those are great numbers.
But he let it slip. I think that Sunday night that it ended on the 25th. He said, I think, or was it the 4th? Anyway, it doesn't matter. The Sunday night. It was 10 to 4 on Saturday, 10 to 3 again on Sunday, the last weekend in June.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. It wasn't very hot. It was a little breezy. We didn't get rained out like we historically have. At least
storms.
One day we get soaked halfway through the show. So we had none of that. But we had almost 25,000 excited tiny house people.
Yeah.
Beautiful homes were there. We brought a 10-foot gooseneck shell.
Yep.
And something, stick around to the end. I'm going to talk about something that we've learned from that. And
June bee was that one.
Yeah. And it might even save you several $1,000s. So make sure you pay attention till the end of this episode. But that tiny homes are illegal. That's not true. It's let's start calling them what they are, and let's get them certified. Let's get them certified to match a code that a jurisdiction, a city, a county, a state has on their desk, man. Let's, if you go in there and make them engage their brain in any gear but neutral, it ain't happening. It's just not. So tell them that you're curious about their manufactured housing or their park model RV code, their land use code in their jurisdiction, wherever you're considering purchasing land. And you'll find that. You'll find that the county's, the land use department will be really forthcoming and tell you exactly what you can and cannot do. Just flat out debunks this illegal tiny house myth.
Correct.
Now there's a catch. What can't you do in an RV? Do you know?
What can't I do in an RV?
What can't anyone do in an RV? We just talked about this. 25 million hardened criminals in this country. What are they doing illegally?
Living permanently
in an RV.
In an RV.
That's the catch.
Yes.
So let's talk about that for a quick second as we kind of go into myth number 4, which is there's no financing options for tiny homes.
Oh boy.
So, so we're going to pick this one up here, right? Yeah, lack of financing options. We're taking notes here. So we're trying to be prepared since we haven't done this in 3 months. And people were getting a little bitchy with this, weren't they? They're like, hey, man, I was listening to all your podcasts until you quit.
Well, yeah.
And we're like,
we're not quitters.
We're not quitters. We're just busy. We got tiny house stuff to build. Sorry.
We're just really busy. And yeah.
Myth number 4, lack of financing options for tiny homes. Again, flatly not true. We've had 3 in the last...
Just this month.
This month. And this month is only 2 or 3 days old.
Yeah.
So that's not true. We have financing options available on our website. Mm-hmm. They're not great options because they're financing. And if you don't pay attention to the news, prime interest rate right now is over 8.5%. It's bonkers.
Yeah.
8.75. And we have a couple of programs that do signature loans for tiny home kits that are not assembled.
Right.
And that means uncollateralized. That means very expensive interest. Even if you have fantastic credit, the rate's going to suck. It just is. But it's a construction loan. All construction loans, rates typically suck. They're higher than your mortgage. They're higher than your car. It's a little higher risk loan. So lenders consider that. The higher the risk, the more they get to charge you to use their money while you're doing your project. Mm-hmm. So once you're done with your project, and this is what I've told people, take the financing option if that's all you can do, but make sure that you don't sit on that financing option. As soon as that thing's done, and the key is to get it certified as an RV. Call our friends at Pacific West and Associates or somebody else. There's several RV sanctioning bodies out there, but what you need is somebody who can underwrite to ANSI 1195 code. Pacific West and Associates, Alex Ontiveros is who we use, and I have his personal cell phone number, so if you need to reach him, get a hold of me, I'll get a hold of him, and we'll get him to inspect your home and make sure that it's to ANSI code. Once he goes through all of those steps, you get the seal, and you can then go to those jurisdictions and get a permit to place that thing on your property, right? But more importantly, you can refinance that expensive construction loan, hopefully, into an RV loan, maybe that's considerably lower interest rates and at a longer term, because you have a certified RV.
Right.
And it was, if it started life as a trailer-made foundation with steel frame kit, then it is still considered a trailer-made vehicle.
Right.
So it is valuated correctly, and you can get a loan on it. Just a flat line through the statement that you can't get financing for tiny houses. This is not true. It's several builders in the industry from early on resisting change and resisting oversight and regulation and not wanting to find a lane to run in, right?
Right.
And that's unfortunate because some really, really great, talented builders out there have folded up shop and said, I don't want to get insurance. I don't want to get a license. I don't want to have the state up my butt or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's sad. It makes a better industry for everybody out there as a result.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the reality is if somebody doesn't want to play by the rules as they evolve and as they come through, well, then you probably don't want to buy a home from those people either. My best connection between those two things.
Yeah.
It's best to play by the rules. It's best to have certifications, and it's best to, I don't know, I guess kind of have the receipts when you say you're a manufacturer and you do things in your factories. Be able to prove that.
Yeah. Okay.
So
bottom line is that if you want and you are seeking financing, that is an option. It might be a different way around than you would if you were going to go get a car. But call us. We can help you with that. We can give you the words. This lovely couple that just came and picked up their trailer and their frame kit this week, they got a loan. And it's a 5-year loan, and it made so much more sense to them to get that than to pay credit card prices or fees.
Yeah, that's
the interest
thing.
that's on a credit card, or there's another reason that they gave me.
You talking about Andy?
Yeah.
What's up, Andy?
Yeah. Feel free in the comments, Andy, to remind me of what was the other reason.
Catch us up,
said.
if you will. Let's like to see what the third one was. So that's kind of what we were talking about, taking and building a home to ANSI 1195 code standard. It opens up financing options, 21st Century Mortgage. I called Alpine Bank here locally.
Yep.
We have one finance with Alpine Bank here locally. We have a 10x40 that we're building all the way through.
Right.
Yeah, it's financed 100% in-house by Alpine Bank as a park model RV. Now, here's the kicker. That one is actually going on a foundation. The bank is considering it real estate. They're putting a mortgage. Yeah, they're putting a mortgage on this. And we actually engineered permanent foundation, our steel chassis on top of a concrete pier set to land it permanently.
Yeah.
And then with our new modular design, take the running gear out from under it when it's set on its piers. Stay tuned. There'll be some footage of that whenever we get that project a little further along. We're kind of on the you're excited about that one, aren't you?
I am. It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be cool. This is a first of this type of foundation design. Hasn't been anywhere that I've ever seen.
No.
And this is going to be a game changer. So for those of you who follow us already and know that you want an oversized on a piece of land, but maybe today's not the day you have the piece of land.
Yeah.
We kind of have a new one-size-fits-all solution that this first model is going to be the proof of concept.
Yep.
Well, it's not a concept anymore. We've already done that.
Right.
This is the first production model of a 10x40 complete home that we're sending down the road to Durango.
Yeah.
Pretty
exciting.
cool. It is pretty exciting.
It's exciting.
Boy, how things change, huh?
Oh, boy. Yes, they do.
So, again, to remember the 4 myths, let's just kind of wrap up here really quick and let the listeners get on with their day. Size limitations for tiny homes.
You don't have to live in a hallway.
What she said. Mobility of tiny homes. The permitting process is not the boogeyman.
No.
It's not that big a deal at all. The standard size today is what? What are you taking orders for every week?
Anywhere from 28 by 10 to 32 by 10.
Yeah?
Yep. Those are the most common.
Yeah.
Yep. Hands down.
And just as an example, a knockdown kit for that's around 27, 28 grand, give or take.
Yeah.
And stood up into a roughed in shell for you guys is about 35, 36.
Yeah,
I think.
somewhere in there.
Yeah, it moves up and down about 10% per 2 foot. So
yeah,
But if you have an interest in that, we're doing a September sale.
Do tell.
5% off your kit the month of September.
Nice.
I can't say this out loud because I'm afraid it'll keep everybody from joining us. So I'm not going to. I'm going to do it after the fact.
Oh, okay.
We talked about it a little bit. We spilled the beans with Julie on Friday. Julie, if you're listening, you know this already. Either you already caved and subscribed this weekend, or you were not the one you hoped you would be. And I can't say it any differently because then I'm going to spill the surprise. So, Julie in Arizona, I'm looking forward to talking to you tomorrow. And I hope that when you see this will make sense to you, but you'll understand what we were talking about on here. Nobody else will, so we'll have to do a follow-up. It sounds almost weird when I say it. All right. Well, I think that's it for this episode of the Talk Show.
So.
I'm going to kick this one on down the curb. And
Okay, down the road motors.
Down the road motors.
As we like to say.
If you guys have any questions about what size limitations, first of all, just to wrap up, don't pick an 8-foot wide hallway to move your stuff into and then move in with it. That makes for a hard life. That's why the only thing you see on tiny house listings is pre-owned 8-foot tiny houses. Everybody thinks that a permit is a harder pill to swallow than living in their hallway. And we just flatly disagree with that because we've seen so many thousands of 10-foot and 12-foot tiny homes leave our factory that it just debunks that myth altogether. Yeah. So dream big. You can dream tiny, but dream comfortable. You're not gonna put 60,000 miles a year on your tiny home, and if you are, then you shouldn't be buying a tiny home. You should be buying a really badass travel trailer anyway, because it's way more the tool for that job.
Right.
A tiny house is meant to park and stay put and take very good care of you for a longer time. So I say, build it as wide as you want to live in, and then deal with moving it as you need to.
Right.
And hire a professional. The mobility of tiny homes. If you want to move these things around, again, don't feel like you've got shackles on your feet that won't let you spend $20 or $30 online and get a permit. If you hire a professional mover, they already know this stuff.
Yep.
Right? Legality of tiny houses. If you get them certified, they become very legal very quickly, turns out. So if you're building to ANSI code 1195 or IRC modular, if that's the route you choose, because that's what you need for an ADU. ADU goes under IRC most of the time. But for us on wheels, tiny house on wheels, ANSI 11.9.5 gives us financing options, gives us much more favorable terms, gives us a lane to run in with jurisdictions. They know what in the heck we're talking about because we're vacationing. We're vacationing. We're not living in a park model RV because you can't live in an RV full time.
Right.
So that is a caveat to the legality of tiny homes. In order to get a loan on a tiny house, park model RV, you have to have another address, which is your primary address. So this is a vacation home or a part-time or a rental or a lake house or a family fun spot, but it is not going to be your primary residence. No bank will give you a loan if you say that. So just don't. You live at home with mom and dad, or you've got another address, but keep that and maintain that and verify that. Have a utility bill sent to that. Make sure that the bank can verify your story when you go to get your tiny house loan that people say don't exist. And then last but not least is the financing. So, like I said, that kind of wrapped that up into the number 3. Can finance these things. Like I said, we've done that 3 times already this month. And the link to our financing options are on the website. You can click on the financing tab and it'll take you right to that. For there's not a credit check on the first pass. You can do like a soft pull pre-qualification just based on information you give them. Not until you actually go to our website and accept an offer does it actually pull your credit bureau and show as an inquiry on your credit history. So just so you're aware of that. You can go out there and kind of dip your toe into the water a little bit without having a credit ding. And I guess that's it. That's all I got. You got anything else?
I got nothing, but thank you. We're so enjoying talking to everybody on the phones and keeping busy, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, you guys. We really appreciate this. This is 11 years of support and patronization to our business, and we're excited what the next 11 are going to be like, because now that this industry has taken off to this direction that it has, this bigger, better, kind of RV park community sort of model. I'm thrilled for the future. I can't wait to see what the next 5 years holds for Trailer Made and the Tiny House Experts.
Never boring.
Never a dull day.
Never a dull day.
Never. Thank you all for watching us and listening. Please, wherever you download your podcast, Spotify, Apple Play Music, Google Play, and Buzzsprout is where we're hosted. But obviously, please like and subscribe if you like the video content that we do our very best to get out on a semi-regular basis, but fail often. And we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
If you enjoyed today's episode and you want to hear more, please feel free to offer up any suggestions in the comments below for us. Please make sure to subscribe to our channel and like the content that you enjoy. It really helps us grow. You can also find us at trailermadetrailers.com and on Facebook, Instagram, and wherever you download your podcasts. As always, thank you so much for your continued support.